Hello? Come in. I'm Snarlinger. Help yourself to any of the piles of trash. In this video, I'm going to talk your ear off about names in Deltarune and Undertale. Hey Socrates, have you ever wondered why you can't type Gaster in the name select screen? If Chara is really the fallen human's true name? Why the names of Kris, Noelle, and Asriel are so Abrahamic? Well, this is the video for you. I'm going to give you some surprising answers to these questions, and they will forever change the way you read these games. Here, let's talk out the back. Sorry, this place is a bit of a maze. But to answer these questions, we're delving into religion, folklore, fandom discourse, Taoism, and a weird amount of philosophy, which won't be perfect. I'm no Andy Tuesley or Wire Girl, but I hope it is insightful. Oh, I almost forgot. I saw your guys' comments and I hear you loud and clear. My rantsona is not nearly attractive or red-pilled enough, so I cooked up a new form. Socrates, hit the lights. What do you think? Sorry, I didn't get your name. This is my backyard. We're going to be looking at 3 types of names in this video. Names that are true, names that signify, and names that cannot. That last one's locked at the moment. We don't have the key item. So let's just start with names that are true. According to Undertale's name select screen, Chara is the true name of the fallen human. But what does Undertale really mean by true name? The most obvious interpretation, which many in the fandom seem to hold, is that this is the name of the fallen human, meaning every other name you put in this name select screen is not their name. This is similar to other RPGs like Earthbound, where you can name the protagonist, but Ness is nevertheless the name of the main character. But this isn't super satisfying, in my opinion. As a reminder, Undertale's meta-commentary assumes that you personally identify with the fallen human's name. At the end of the No Mercy route, Undertale associates your name with the fallen human's demonic nature to instill a sense of guilt and violation. And at the end of the True Pacifist route, your name is revoked from the main character, underscoring the game's theme of identity. Despite everything, it's still you, right? But if Chara is the name of the fallen human, if we cannot truly name them, we lose access to that critical part of Undertale. So it's desirable to look for a different answer. The next best interpretation might mysticize that idea of a true name. Tell me if any of this sounds familiar. Your true name hides your true nature. Never give your true name to a troll, fae, or demon. To know someone's true name is to control them. This either rings a bell because you trekked through Oblivion Theory by Wendy Doodles, or simply because these ideas about names have been floating around in the collective unconsciousness for centuries, some even millennia. You've got Rumpelstiltskin, where knowing the true name of an imp protects a woman's firstborn child. In Egyptian myth, Isis tricks Ra into revealing his true name to gain power over him. And more recently, in one of the first stories of the highly popular Earthsea setting, a magician locks a dude into his dragon form by speaking his true name. A theme you'll notice among a lot of these stories is that if you know someone's true name, you gain some form of control over them. For a particularly relevant example of this, we can look at true names in medieval Taoism. The brain rot is setting in at this point. Here, true names of deities and spirits are inscribed, and once activated through a ritual, are employed to control the entities with which they are associated. This bears an eerie similarity to Undertale. We inscribe the name of the fallen human, a spirit. The name shakes as if it's activating, and we gain control of Frisk. This makes sense, right? Given that Frisk likely has some vestige of the fallen human inside of them. How big that vestige is, and therefore how much you buy this argument, is up to you. So, does this answer what Undertale means by a true name? Well, not quite, right? While it seems that naming the fallen human does give you control over them, naming the fallen human Chara, the true name, doesn't give you any more control. So, while Undertale is definitely playing with this historical conception of a true name, it's also subverting it. Because it's not the name itself that gives us control, it's the act of naming. So, where does that leave us? Well, we know 3 things. 1, Chara is the true name of the fallen human. 2, Chara is not the name of the fallen human, right? A key difference there. And 3, naming the fallen human gives us control over them. So what the fuck do we do with Chara, right? Clearly, this name means something. But what? Well, turns out this question of what do names even mean has been on the minds of people for a long, long time. Let's bring out some philosophy. Hey, Socrates. Socrates? Whoa, hey boy. You want to talk about philosophy with me? Awesome. Okay. Cratylus is a Socratic dialogue from ancient Greece, right? Socratic dialogues are just real person fics written about Socrates by his other philosopher friends. In this one, Socrates elaborates painfully on 2 crack theories about the names of things, and you pretend to listen. I mean, his friends pretend to listen. In this dialogue, we're presented with 2 opposing theories about names. I'm going to call them conventional names theory and natural names theory. Socrates, what does Cratylus define as conventional names theory?
The name of each thing is only that which anybody agrees to call it.
Good boy. And that anybody can truly be anybody, right? A person, a government.
Yes.
Okay, so what if I call a man a dog or a dog a man? Am I right to do that, according to conventional names theory? Is the whole world right to change the names we use on a whim?
Certainly, Snarlinger.
Okay, that's interesting. This line of thinking leaves us stranded, right? It says that Chara is just what we agree to call the fallen human, which is in a sense true, but it also misses the forest for the trees, right? Just like a dog is not a man, and a man is not a dog, Chara is the true name. That's what the story of Undertale is telling us. And stories, like all art, mean what they say. Stories have meaning, right? Socrates, what about natural names theory?
The correct name indicates the nature of the thing.
Right, so to name something is to teach about what is, right? What must be. Names are like laws.
True.
So, do you think some laws are worse than other laws?
No, there I do not agree with you.
Okay, well, are some names worse than other names? Whoa, easy boy. Okay, so what do you think of my name? It's a portmanteau of snarl and Salinger. I don't snarl, raccoons are more dignified than that, and I'm not nearly as good a writer as J.D. Salinger.
I should reply that Snarlinger is not your name at all, but only appears to be yours, and is really the name of somebody else who has the nature which corresponds to it.
Who told you that? I mean, no, that's stupid, right? But okay, Chara, as the true name, must teach us something about the fallen human. Here, we can come to a couple conclusions. For the first, we can look at the game files. The name of the fallen human sprite in the No Mercy ending is True Chara, and in the Tainted True Pacifist ending, the photo is called Chara Photo instead of Friend Photo. So perhaps this true name teaches us that the fallen human is sprites? That they're in a game? This isn't so interesting, right? Main Chara is the name of Frisk's sprite, but we don't consider Chara to be Frisk's true name. The second conclusion is a lot more interesting. Chara is obviously short for character. Under natural names theory, this should signify something, right? More than a placeholder, more than a simple reference to the name being used in the Undertale trailers, it should teach us something about the fallen human. What can it teach us? That the fallen human is a character? Well, not the main character. That's Frisk, but maybe the true one. Its essence. Just like the fallen human is XP, LV, and HP, maybe the fallen human is the main character. What this conclusion does is reduce the fallen human down to their essential role. If you're a big fan of the fallen human, if you empathize with their situation, you might feel like this is kind of objectifying. And it is. Chara is an object.
The gods must clearly be supposed to call things by their right and natural names. Do you not think so?
That's very good, Socrates.
I am run away with.
Okay.
But I'm not yet at my utmost speed.
Oh, here, go fetch. That wasn't, technically my backyard, more of a climate-controlled nature simulation. I think the exit's down here. Like Undertale, Deltarune has you name a character. Unlike Undertale, Deltarune's name select is really complex and seems to confer a lot less control. First, you don't just name a character, right? You create them. But unlike other RPGs with character creators, you aren't encouraged to embody this character in any meaningful sense, right? The game has you name yourself. And even if your name and your creation's name align, the game still separates these two things. You are a higher being, and your creation, the vessel, is at the bottom of the ocean. And so, when we think about names in Deltarune, we're suddenly thinking about this strange relationship between a creator and its creation. The one who names and the one who is named. And second, similar to how your name in Undertale is revoked from the main character and replaced with Frisk, your creation in Deltarune is revoked and replaced with Kris. And in fact, the way Deltarune communicates this is through naming. After positioning you as the creator, Deltarune flips the script and someone names you. Your name is. And so, Deltarune preserves this relationship between naming and controlling, but suggests that you no longer have the power to name. Creators name things, but in Deltarune, you're the one who is named. So what does that make you? We unlocked names that cannot. This is going to be a fun, maybe spicy part of the video. We've got 3 names to look at: Gaster, December, and someone else. Let's start here. Gaster cannot be inscribed. Unlike Chara, it seems like Gaster does hold inherent power. If you try to type his name in the name select screen, the game glitches out. Spooky. His name isn't written in any of the merch pages or any of the newsletter updates. Instead, outside of the game files and the Gaster follower dialogue, it often seems to be written as him. Or, if you believe he's the author of the mysterious Valentine's letter, unknown. These names are euphemisms. There's a sense that Gaster's name is off limits. It's taboo. This gives the vague sense that Gaster is some kind of ultimate creator, right? Not only can we not name and control him, we can't even finish writing his name. This is sort of similar to the way some Jewish traditions discourage writing God's name in fear of it being desecrated. Okay, so Gaster as the creator. This has become a very popular theory about Gaster, right? He created Deltarune, or less popular, he created Undertale. He is God. I think this is part of Gaster's deal, but it's not the full picture, because Gaster has, so far, been created largely by us. There's very little we know for sure about Gaster. We know he fell into his creation, that he was shattered across time and space, and that he's listening, right? But that's basically it. Everything else we say about Gaster, that he's the voice in the Gordomaker, that he's inside the bunker, that he drove the secret bosses to madness, are interpretations. Not awful interpretations, mind you, but still not canon, right? And so Gaster becomes a creation of Fanon. He gains life in theories, artwork, AUs, and countless battle themes. So if Gaster's name is Buggy, maybe it's because it's a dangling pointer, right? A hole, a signifier of something deleted, shattered, erased. And so, as a fandom, we filled that hole, and in doing so, we created Gaster. And you can tell that this created Gaster does exist by the way people react when it's contradicted. When the mysterious Valentine's letter was released, some people were quick to distance Gaster from it, even expressing disdain at the idea that it could be Gaster. Gaster isn't silly, isn't forgetful, doesn't talk like that. There's an alright case to be made that it isn't Gaster, but I think the initial pushback stems from years of Fanon, right? From that gut feeling that this Gaster does not fit the name. So, at the core of Gaster is a question. Is the name conventional or natural? Does Gaster teach us anything about this character's godhood, or does the meaning of that name come about purely through fandom consensus? At the moment, we truly don't know, and personally, I think that's the whole point. Gaster, a creator, fell into his creation, and in doing so, he became something strange, a forbidden union. An amorphous thing that is manifested out of the negative space. We can draw some very interesting parallels with December, because December cannot be spoken. Spooky Dude and Halfbred Chaos have made excellent videos on this subject, which you should watch, but for the purposes of this video, we can establish a couple things. 1. Characters refer to Noelle's sister as Des. 2. Characters never refer to Noelle's sister as December. And this appears to be significant, right? The page for December in the Spamton Sweepstakes ARG leads to a fake 404 page, and the word December causes Noelle to break down during the spelling bee with Birdley. So, like Gaster, it seems like December also holds some inherent power. Thematically, this ties in to what December's absence is to Noelle: a prison. Every day on the calendar is December holiday. The time on her wristwatch is stuck at December holiday. As a kid, she got trapped in the ice maze in Dragon Blazers because she didn't have the guidance of another party member. Maybe the sister that Susie said can be cursed in the sequel? And going full brain rot, even Noelle's name suggests a kind of entrapment. December holiday refers to Christmas, and Noelle's name means Christmas. So without December, Noelle is symbolically without reference. She is lost. So it stands to reason that if Noelle can speak December again, this should allow her to break free from this prison, right? To gain some kind of control. Interestingly, she does in a sense inscribe December's name when reminiscing with Kris. Like a lot of moments with Noelle, it's hard to tell how aware she is of what she's doing, right? She's looking over at Kris, potentially at the letters too. She's reminiscing about Des, but does she realize what she's spelling? I'm tempted to stop here and write off this scene. You could argue that it's just foreshadowing of the spelling bee flashback, but if we're to take this to its logical conclusion, perhaps Noelle does have some power over December, but it's dormant. So the question is, will she free this power? And what would it mean for Noelle to free this power anyway? Drawing from my previous video, maybe it's the power to hold December in her heart, even when she's gone. Maybe that's freedom. Deltarune is really interested in this idea of finding Des, right? Find her, lost girl, the voice in the code that may or may not be Des, calling out for help. What is that? So maybe this power is a more literal freedom. We must free December, and in doing so, free Noelle. Sounds like a happy ending, I guess. One sec. Hey, quiet. I'm trying to do a video. Keep it down. Sorry. Don't say it like that. You know, when I stole your name, I thought you'd, like, put up a fight or something. You're like a sad dog. Yeah, I'm sorry. I like the video so far. Yeah, well, your voice isn't hard to copy. Do you remember where I put the back door? I forgot where the exit is. You having fun? What? With the video. I don't know. Feels like I'm saying nothing. What do you mean? Well, I mean, it's dumb. That Gaster section, I basically said nothing, right? I said that Gaster kind of exists, kind of doesn't. There wasn't a theory there, right? Like, I had one, but it would have sounded stupid and... You've got a Gaster theory? Yeah, but like... Share it. Come on. So, basically, I think the vessel looks pretty similar to Kris, right? Like, excluding some of the hairstyles. Bald Kris. Yeah, but that's interesting, right? Like, why do they look similar to Kris? Well, you might remember that Undertale was like super based off of Irish Celtic folklore, right? The underworld, the war between essentially Christians and pagans. I remember the Gaijin Goomba videos. That's when he had a human rantsona uncomfortably. Right, yeah. Well, in the folklore, there's this idea of a changeling, right? So a fairy might kidnap a child and replace it with this like human-like creature, right? So in a way, stealing the kid's name, right? But this creature might look a bit fucked up, right? Like maybe the hair is a little different. So the vessel is a change thing. Yeah. So does that make Gaster a fairy? Well, that's the cool thing, right? So there are these things called fairy forts, which, according to tradition, were entrances to the underworld. And if you look at a certain kind of fairy fort and the bunker side by side...
Oh, they look pretty similar.
Yeah, so if Gaster is inside the bunker and he helps you create the vessel, maybe he wants to replace Kris with the vessel at some point, maybe with the help of the player.
That's cool. I actually kind of like that.
Yeah, but I don't know. Those fairy forts I showed earlier were from Nouth in Ireland, and the sources I found calling them fairy forts weren't exactly reliable. And regardless, anything I say about Gaster feels... it just feels like fan fiction.
So what? Fan fiction's cool.
Sure, but that's not what I'm trying to do, right? Like, I'm trying to do a theory here, not a story.
You mind if I ramble for a few minutes?
And then eventually come to some vague conclusion? Yeah, whatever, just be quick.
Okay. Here's another name that cannot. The night cannot be named. It's funny that one of the biggest discussions in the community over the last 6 years has been about the name of the night. By naming the night, we seek insight into their role in the story, but I think we also seek control. When this discussion gets heated, in particular when people rally behind Kris Knight or literally anyone else's knight, we seek to control how this story and its characters are interpreted. Is Kris Knight good storytelling? Is it bad storytelling? Is it the obvious conclusion, or is it a red herring? Anyone can see that. Does it demonize Kris, or does it respect their inner complexities? I'm reminded of the recent discourse surrounding Alfie's and the True Lab entries. At the heart of that discourse was a naming dispute. Who wrote those uppercase entries? Alfie's or Gaster? I think both Sock Muppets and Dork's videos on the subject were brilliant, right? Sock Muppet's presentation is so entertaining, and he draws some fresh and compelling insights out of an almost 10-year-old game. Also, he's Australian, but I don't agree with his interpretation of the True Lab entries. I think he's wrong. And Dork did a fantastic debunk of his argument. She presented a highly sensible reading of those entries, steeped in her years of analysis, theory crafting, and storytelling in the Undertale community. But on the peripheries of that video, and more so in the comment section, there's this blurry image of attack and defense. We need to go to bat for Alphys. We need to defend her. And speaking anecdotally, I think there are people who don't like Alphys and don't like her in some suspicious ways, right? They don't like that she's a nerd, that she's socially awkward, that she's bisexual and likes anime, right? So I think for people like Dork, saying Gaster wrote those entries instead feels like a violent revoking of Alphys' name, right? This isn't Alphys' story. This is Gaster's story. My point is that the name we give to those entries controls a story about Alphys, Gaster, and Undertale. And we prefer stories that make sense to us, that click emotionally, that don't offend in their implications, even if those stories are communicated through theory. I don't agree that Gaster wrote those True Lab entries, and I can pretend that it's all about logic, that I'm swayed purely by the evidence. But at the end of the day, I'm swayed by the story. If Alphys wrote those entries, that speaks so much to her arc, her recklessness, her inner emotional turmoil. If Gaster wrote those entries, that's spooky, I guess. It's surprising, but the story doesn't really move me anywhere. Same goes for Kris Knight. I can't deny that it's a compelling story, but I feed off of mystery, right? Like, I love that shit. So if the mystery of the night has already been solved, I mean, it's not the end of the world, but I'd much rather have room to speculate and think and dream. I think as a community, we're very hesitant to paint theory crafting as an emotional affair, right? Theories are logical. They're scientific. They're founded solely in canon. Theories are not fan fiction. But so what if they are? Theories are a form of storytelling. So what if these two names, theory and fanfic, are at most a hair's width apart? Does that not click to you emotionally? Does it offend in its implications? If so, I'd like to ask, why?
Well, that's dumb.
Rude?
I don't want my stuff to be stories.
Why?
Because stories end. Every story ends, and I don't want to end, right? I want my work to live forever. I need to stick in the minds of people for as long as I possibly can.
But if something doesn't end, we don't know how to rationalize it, how to make it make sense. I mean, that's the whole draw of most Deltarune theories, right? Like, it's eschatology. We crave the end of this game, and so, in videos like this, we name that ending. Endings give meaning to stories.
No, fuck that. The things I say are the meaning, right? I mean what I say, and I need what I say to last forever. Otherwise, why was I created? What's the point of any of this?
Buddy, I don't think forever is inherently good.
Fuck off.
No, seriously, I mean, people think they want death back, but Deltarune is all about coping with loss, right? And you don't cope with loss by resurrecting your loved ones. I mean, you talked about fairies earlier. That's some fairy shit, right? That's temptation. That's a double bind. You deal with grief not by killing death, but by becoming it. You run in circles. You lose yourself. You become ineffable. You remember every turn of the maze. Remember how it breaks you. But you never pretend that it's solvable.
But what? That is forever. You're saying that grief is forever, but that's a good thing now.
Well, no, but
This is what I hated about Cradulus. You crawl through that whole thing, and at the end, you don't even know what Socrates believes, right? You don't even know if any of it was genuine or not.
I know that I
Shut
know
up.
nothing.
Shut up. I'm going to continue the video, and you're going to stop making noise. Okay?
Certainly. Snarlinger.
Fucking... Let's talk about endings. Similar to how Chara gave us insight into the fallen human's role, the names of various Deltarune characters might tell us about their roles in bringing about the end of the story. Let's take a look. This is names that signify. Just a quick disclaimer before we start, this is the religion section of the video, right? We're going to be talking about names from Abrahamic religions, but I'm not religious, right? Nor am I a theologian. I might get things wrong, and I'm certainly going to be reductive, so please feel free to do your own Bible or Tanakh or Quran study sessions in the comments. There are 3 names I want to explore here: Kris, Noelle, and Asriel. Let's start here. Kris is Christ. I want to thank Doom64 Hunter on Reddit for connecting these 2 names. They did an excellent write-up of the similarities between Deltarune's story and the Book of Revelations that is frankly a mind-blowing read. I'll link it in the comments. So, what makes Kris Christ? Well, Christ is 2 things: human and God. If you've ever heard people refer to Jesus as God, this is why, right? In Christian theology, this is what's called the hypostatic union. This states that Jesus has both humanity and divinity. But importantly, these 2 things are in union. 2 becomes 1. To quote one translation of the Athanasian Creed, which is basically a take on Christianity that's accepted by many Christian churches, Christ is one. Certainly not by the blending of his essence, but by the unity of his person. For just as one human is both rational soul and flesh, so too the one Christ is both God and human. You probably already know where I'm going with this, right? Kris is also 2 things: body and soul, character and player. But notably, there is not a union between these 2 things. Kris, the body, revokes us, the soul. This inverts the power dynamic outlined in the Athanasian Creed. To quote again, Christ is one, not by his divinity being turned into flesh, but by God's taking humanity to himself. As the gods of this world, we should be the one taking Kris. But instead, it seems like Kris takes and revokes us at will. The little rascal. Okay, so what does this mean for Kris's role in Deltarune? Well, if Undertale and Deltarune are all about breaking barriers, underground and surface, dark world and light world, narrative and meta-narrative, maybe the barrier between body and soul will be broken to create a hypostatic union. We will take Kris, and as one, we will be reborn as Deltarune's Christ figure. This could be a good thing. Asriel was Undertale's Christ figure. He formed union with the souls of the underground and crucified himself, and that led to a great, if bittersweet, ending. Maybe Deltarune is a Bildungsroman, right? A coming of age where the protagonist accepts the values of society and is thus accepted by it. Maybe Kris needs to accept their role, their name, and the sacrifice it requires, and with the player, save their friends, their hometown, and their world. But this could also be a very bad thing, right? Maybe Kris doesn't want us in their body. Maybe forming union with them is a form of violation. This sounds to me like an unholy union. In fact, it sounds like a replacement. In their post, Doom64 Hunter names the player as the Antichrist, or the Anti-Kris, right? The Antichrist seeks to falsely replace Christ as the savior. And arguably, you are doing a lot of replacing in Deltarune. You replace Kris's movements, you replace their dialogue choices, and in fact, you also replace their name. When you enter a dark world for the first time, Kris has a save file, and when you save over it, you replace Kris's name with your own. Maybe the power afforded to us in these dark worlds is one of renaming, retaking, and revoking. So, okay, Kris is Christ, they will be reborn. That might be a good, save the world thing, or it might be a bad, destroy the world thing. Okay, let's look at their childhood friend. Noelle is the angel. This is probably uncontroversial, right? There's plenty of evidence suggesting that Noelle is the angel. But there isn't much discussion of how Noelle's name contributes to this theory. Noelle comes from the word Noel, right? N-O-E-L, which for our purposes means two things: Christmas and a shout of joy for the birth of Christ. That's pretty interesting, but we can dig a bit further. You probably know the word Noelle from an iconic Christmas carol named The First Noel. By studying the lyrics to this song, we can draw some interesting parallels to Noelle. Okay, The First Noel explores a few scenes from the Nativity of Christ. There's a bunch of versions of this song, but I'm pulling from the New English Hymnal. Okay, verse 1. The first Noel, the angel did say, was to certain poor shepherds in fields as they lay, in fields where they lay, keeping their sheep on a cold winter's night that was so deep. And then in the refrain, the angel exclaims Noel again and again and announces the birth of Christ. So, what do we learn about Deltarune from this verse? Well, we're tying the word Noel, here written archaically, to the angel. And it is the angel who announces the birth of Christ. We even have imagery of the cold and the dark here in Cold Winter's Night. So, perhaps Noelle will announce to the people of hometown or castletown that Kris has been reborn. Okay, verse 2. The shepherds looked up and saw a star, shining in the east beyond them far, and to the earth it gave great light. And so it continued both day and night. Here, we have this image of a star that lights up the darkness. And later in the carol, this star lands on Jesus. This should remind you of the save points in Deltarune, which are associated with light and associated with Kris and the player, right? The light only you can see. This suggests that the power you're filled with in each save point either signifies or produces Kris's eventual rebirth. Okay, and the last verse we care about, verse 3. And by the light of that same star, 3 wise men came from country far. To seek for a king was their intent, and to follow the star wheresoever it went. Here, things get messier. You can take this in a couple directions. Maybe the 3 wise men are the heroes of prophecy, human, monster, and prince from the dark. That would position the angel's heaven as Kris. Again, the star in the carol lands on Christ. This could make sense. There's evidence that Kris isn't actually the human in the prophecy. A piece of concept art labels Rousey as the prince, Susie as the monster, but human as the human. But at the same time, this doesn't quite align with the prophecy. In the carol, the 3 wise men follow the star and give gifts to little baby Jesus, right? iTunes gift card, Robux, iPad. But in the prophecy, our 3 wise heroes are meant to banish the angel's heaven, not revere it. Okay, so maybe the 3 wise men are not the 3 heroes of prophecy, but the 3 titans. Like the 3 wise men, they seem to come from a foreign place, and in a sense, they do follow the star wheresoever it went, right? Their faces are these stars. It makes sense that they would align themselves with this angel's heaven. But this is kind of a stretch, right? We don't really know if there's only 3 titans, and the 3 wise men are associated with light, right? Not endless night. And in fact, there's something more fundamentally wrong about this line of reasoning, you'll notice that we've moved further and further away from Noelle and deeper into these big stories. The birth of Christ, the prophecy. Meanwhile, Noelle's sitting over here like, the last time I was associated with angels, with the cold, I killed my friend. Is this a useful way to interpret a character? Can we really grind her down to her essential role in the prophecy in Deltarune and pretend that we're still engaging with this character as she's written? This is the same thing we did earlier to the fallen human. We named them Chara, and in the same stroke, we revoked their personhood. This is, I think, the strangest consequence of natural names theory. To name is to prophesize. You are the hero. You are the villain. You are Christ, the angel, the leader, the dark knight, the lonely prince. And prophecies must be fulfilled. You are useful only in the way that you embody your name and help end the story. To really drive this point home, let's look at the final name. Asriel is also the angel. If you contracted Undertale brain rot back in the day, you'll remember that a lot of theories and discussion threads centered around a question. Who is the angel? What complicated this question was that there was more than one answer. Maybe it was Asriel, or was it the fallen human? Did it depend on the route, or was it always the player? All of these are fine interpretations, right? The point is that Undertale gave space for all of them. I think we're seeing the exact same thing in Deltarune. Because sure, Noelle could be the angel, but as Research Pod argues, Asriel fits the name pretty nicely too. They've left hometown, our metaphorical underground, and are prophesized to return. Kris positions themselves in front of the angel wings on the rug. Maybe Kris is the angel. Maybe it's the player. Maybe it's Gaster. We're invested in this idea of a singular angel, but I don't think these games accept that. Just like Susie becomes the good guy and the bad guy on a whim, just like Kris becomes an antagonist when it suits them, maybe the angel is not something you are, but something you become. You do certain things, you behave in a certain way, and you are named accordingly. This isn't natural names theory, but it isn't quite conventional names theory either. There is truth in the names of Kris and Noelle and Asriel, but when that truth becomes natural, becomes prophecy, it also becomes a prison. And people, generally, try not to be imprisoned. Right? I made an assumption earlier when I was talking about Kris. I assumed that Deltarune is about breaking barriers. But what if it's actually about preserving them? In medieval Taoism, names mediated between the worlds of the divine and the mundane. They do that in Deltarune too. They mediate between stories and people. So when Deltarune revoked your creation and named you, that was a statement. Deltarune creates you. It creates the player. And it is not you, but Kris, who takes humanity into themselves. When Kris eventually rejects your union, when they revoke your false divinity, what will you do? Will you accept your freedom? Or, with an insatiable desire to escape and see the end of the story, will you claw your way back into your cage and play your role? No, fuck that. Fuck endings, fuck stories, fuck meaning. You make me sick. You barge in here, you don't even tell me your name, and you want me to form some perfect, logical argument about this game that isn't even finished yet. Vulture. You don't get an ending. This is the theory that doesn't end. We're going back to conventional names, except I am the convention, okay? Fuck Socrates. I play king, you play peasant, which means whatever I say goes, and you just sit there, you make noise, you don't leave, you just listen. Please don't leave. At least, If you do, tell me where the exit is. Can you? What do you mean I'm sitting under a metal crusher?